Okay. So good evening, everyone. A very, very warm welcome to all of you who've joined in for today's Expert Hour Masterclass on Supply Chain Management. And we have, of course, our amazing professors from Rutgers Business School, Professor Joseph Agresta. We also have Professor Shu, and we have an alum from Rutgers Business School as well, Nomisha. So you'll be hearing from them directly. But before I hand it over to them, I'll quickly introduce you all to Education USA. And Education USA is your official source on US higher education. It is supported by the US State Department. And we have a global presence of more than 430 plus centers across 175 plus countries. And Education USA India is based in New Delhi with an advisor in Mumbai. So if you're looking for any updates on the sessions and events that we do at Education USA, you can scan this QR code and follow us on our social media pages on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And yes, stay tuned with us for more such amazing virtual sessions that we do with university experts who can tell you a lot about US excellence and leadership. So with that, I'll just take you through a few housekeeping rules. So please keep your camera and audio muted for enhanced quality. And do feel free to post your questions in the chat box. We will be taking them towards the end of the session. And it's a request that please keep your questions relevant to the session. And yeah, and do check out the resources that we share in the comments box. And with this, I'll hand it over to Professor, who's going to introduce himself and talk a lot about about the supply chain management subject area and take you all through it. So please feel free to put in your questions in the chat box. And again, a very, very big thank you to Professor Joseph, to Professor Shu and Nomisha for joining us for today's session. Thank you so much, Professor. And I'll now let you share your screen.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me just make sure um,
So, okay.
to share with you guys.
So,
Are
yes.
you seeing it pop up?
Um, okay. Now, Professor, I think you should be able to share your screen. Yes, we can see
Okay,
it.
so you should be seeing it, everyone, right?
Yes.
All right, great. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for the opportunity and thank you for the great work that Education USA does. So we really appreciate your partnership with Rutgers. And so thank you so much for giving us the opportunity. So it is an honor to be able to talk to you guys with my team. So thank you. I know it's evening in India, and your interest in supply chain is admirable. And it's also what I like to say spot on because supply chain really is affecting everything we do, and we can make an amazing impact in the supply chain. So I really have two objectives for today's discussion. First of all, I want you to understand the end-to-end supply chain. You know, what makes that end-to-end supply chain? It is both wide and it is both deep. And professionals in supply chain can make an incredible impact on the business, whether you are a sole proprietor or you're a multinational corporation. And my second objective really is to hopefully have you see, if you have a keen interest in supply chain and continuing your education, how Rutgers University can help you get started on that journey. We do have a world-class program with great professors, great alumni. So, you know, we really want you to be able to feel comfortable about that and contacting us again if you see fit. So, a little bit about what we're going to talk about. I like to set the stage. You know, supply chain, you have to understand really the domain knowledge of supply chain. It's very, very critical. I know there's lots of discussions on AI and digitization, and we're going to cover that. But it's also none of that helps you unless you really understand the domain. We'll talk about how it's evolved from when I started many, many years ago. the foundational language of supply chain, which is what they call the SCORE model. And certainly what today's world, special topics and data analytics, which is just a critical enablers to the supply chain. I think many of you are also interested in research. So we have the types of research that we're involved in and also the experiential learning. So feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll try to work through those questions as well. So this is a little bit about me. I've been at Rutgers about 6 years, and I'm an industry person. So I came from industry, two world-class companies, Allied Signal, which is now Honeywell, and Johnson and Johnson, about 20 years of each. So I'm a professor at Rutgers, but I also lead the Master's Science of Supply Chain Analytics program. So it's just been a great part of my career to be part of Rutgers. And I have great partners. And one of the great partners that I have is Professor Shu. So I'm going to let Professor Shu introduce himself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shaowei Xu. I'm an academic person. I've been with Rutgers for almost 20 years. I work with Professor Joe Agresta in our supply chain analytic program. I teach quantitative classes at Rutgers like demand forecasting, Python programming, and business analytics. And we work with Professor Joao Gustavo mentioned our program work with a lot of local industry clients because New Jersey is a big logistic hub on the East Coast area. So we receive a lot of data-driven projects from local companies, and we supervise students who do those industry projects. Professor Joe Agresta will mention the details later on. Yeah, thank you, Joe.
Great, thank you, Xiaowei. And as Xiaowei mentioned, I think one of the things that does differentiate us at Rutgers, we team with a lot of companies, both large and small. If you want to be in supply chain, you have to do supply chain, and that's very, very important to us. So be in the classroom, but also work with these companies. And one of the people that I truly admire is Nomisha. She is an alumni from XLRI in our joint program. And she has just been a fantastic alumni ambassador, but also was a great student, totally engaged. So, Nomisha, I want to have you introduce yourself, and thank you so much for taking the time out from your role at L'Oreal to join us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Professor. And yeah, I would like to start off by saying that Rutgers been great, and Professor Agresta, Professor Shu, and everyone has just been amazing. And they have like really great experience. So yeah. As for my introduction, I am Namisha Beswal. I belong from India. I came to the States in August 2023. As for my education, I have a bachelor's in information and communication tech. I did my MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur, and then that's after that I came to the States and I did my master's in supply chain analytics from Rutgers University. Um, it's been a great experience, and yeah, for my industry experience, I have worked for 3 years in India with a packaging firm called Viraj Industries. And then I have worked as a supply chain consultant here at Johnson& Johnson. I will be talking about it more as we go further and have a discussion. And then I worked as a supply chain specialist at Star and Associates, which is another consulting firm. And I was consulting with Johnson& Johnson, the Diplocentis franchisee. And then currently I have been working with L'Oreal as a supply chain associate. I have a lot of expertise in sales and operations planning, digital transformation, and some data analytics using Power BI, SQL, SAP. Yeah, I am open to discussions, so feel free to send me a message or like connect with me on LinkedIn.
Great,
Um, yeah, thank you.
great. Nomisha, thank you so much for being here. You've been a
Yeah.
role model. You've been a role model for all of us. We really appreciate
Uh,
it.
you are our role model, professor.
Oh, you're very kind. So let's set the stage for supply chain. And some of you may be deeply into the supply chain, and some of you might be just curious about it. So I know we have a wide audience today. So first question I have is, and maybe you guys can put in the chat. Nomisha, maybe you could take a look at the chat for me. And here's the question I have. So where does India stand regarding the percentage of GDP to logistics globally? First, second, third? Anybody have any thoughts? And again, we're talking logistics, which is a part of supply chain, but we thought it would be interesting to start off with this question. Does anybody have a thought on that? Where do you all stand as far as percentage of GDP? You can put that in the chat if you have an answer.
So audiences, please feel free to make
Yep.
a guess at least, and yeah, do put in your answers in the chat box.
Let's see. I think we have a few coming in. All right. Well, needless to say, it's very big. Anybody else want to
Yeah, so Professor, somebody is saying second.
second? Okay.
Yeah,
All
and we
right.
have another response, and that Akash. So he's saying first.
First. Ah,
Yes.
okay. Well, let's take a look. Lot of action. Y'all are number one as a
Wow.
percentage of GDP. 14%. So logistics is just one part of the supply chain. Um, but it's a major element of the supply chain. And you can see, not only that India is number one and the opportunities in India to provide your expertise, but think about it from a global perspective. The BRICS countries, the Europeans, China, USA, look at that in aggregate as well. And, it's a significant opportunity to make an impact for an enterprise. So thank you guys you guys were good first number one and two. So you guys were right in the zone. Thank you. A lot going on in our global economy, right? There are tariffs. We've gone through COVID, and actually COVID basically really made supply chain more aware to everyone, our political leaders, industry, and really having to look at our networks and what are our networks. We're dependent on raw materials, critical minerals. Certainly today, we have fuel pricing or oil pricing fluctuation, and the like. So you could read this word cloud. So it impacts the global economy every day. And that doesn't mean that we sit back and we just go, okay, now we'll just have to take this on and that on. It's how do we build our muscle to be proactive and to come up with solutions. So a lot of supply chain impacts everything we do, everything that's happening in the global economy. And I just wanted to share, I'm not going to read through all of this, but I like to call it the storm and or the opportunity. You have in supply chain the opportunity to be able to build that muscle to be proactive on things, and also to be able to create a lot of change and impactful things based on what's going on in the world. And I think all of you are familiar. We have the tariffs, right? Global trade routes are changing. Networks are changing. You all are aware critical materials are taking center stage. Critical materials for many of our critical products in all of our economies around the world. What's happening with industry shifts, right? Whether it be EVs and automotive, pharmaceutical reshoring. I have a tremendous amount of experience in the pharma world at J&J. Have done a lot of work around the world, and now companies are looking at their networks. What's driving the technology? You're all aware of AI. We're going to share with you a little bit later on where AI can enhance and enable the supply chain, but then again, it still depends on that domain knowledge in the supply chain to make those decisions. And you could read the picture. So, and the other thing, if you look up, I would just say to you all, if you looked up supply chain, you went on AI or you went on a Google search, the word that you would see would be resilience, right? There's been a shift to resilience. And even now with resilience, certainly before resilience, it was a shift to value. So in each of these areas, we can make an impact in the supply chain. So how do we want to look at our networks, right? Tariffs, so where do we want to manufacture our products? Closer to where the customers are, different parts of the world, global view, regional execution. How do we form great agreements for critical minerals and the like? So these are things in the supply chain that you can do that you will have an impact on. And I guess you could tell that's why it is such an exciting space for all of us. But, we do have to look at what are our challenges. So, there was a study and it asked, what have been your biggest supply chain risks? So these are things we need to think about all the time. So globalization is, we have trade conflicts. How do we work through that? How do we manage our intellectual property? How do we look at localization of our manufacturing and our supply base? So these are all decisions and challenges that we have in the supply chain. I can tell you this as someone who has run very large supplier management organizations. Your supplier infrastructure is critical. Are your suppliers capable of supporting the supply chain? And something that you don't hear a lot about, but you all in your business have to ask yourself, are we a preferred customer? Do suppliers want to do business with us based on our behavior, how we treat them, how we share, how we share R&D and where we're making investments, how we share our demand, those types of things. So supplier infrastructure is key. The digital transformation goes without saying, but there's a baseline. Do we have the processes that we can connect our systems together and then hopefully maybe incorporate more predictive models, which we'll share in a little bit? Have our customers changed? Have their buying behaviors changed? So what are the channels we're going to need? Is it going to be brick and mortar stores? Is it going to be more e-commerce? Certainly sustainability and sustainability is not only the physical sustainability, it's how is our labor treated, things like that. Those become very, very important. And our customers, we're all consumers, are looking for more sustainable products. We have core technologies that are possibly becoming obsolete. How do we deal with them? Is there still a customer demand with them? Do we maybe need to license someone to make some of those core older technologies for us? And of course, disruptive events. So these are some basic things when we talk about supply chain challenges that are out there and that are on the mind of our leaders who are running our companies. Again, I guess you could see that I love the cloud charts, if you will. Resilience must cut across the supply chain. And I'd like to just share with you that resilience is not just the way we recover. And yes, it's incredibly important. How do we recover from a risk event or whatever? But resilience in the supply chain is is building that muscle, as I like to call it. So you're talking about what's our vision for our company? How agile are we, right? What's our growth pattern? During COVID, we had Estee Lauder, great company, before COVID was doing a lot of work in e-commerce because they wanted to, make a shift. And so they were building their e-commerce muscle. Now, they did not know that COVID was going to be coming. But because they had that muscle and that's where they wanted to go as a business, when COVID came, they were able to pivot, right? They were agile enough because they had started that foundational work in e-commerce to actually increase their e-commerce from, I think it was about 30% to over 60%. So building that muscle, knowing where you want to go as a business, builds that resilience for when things could be happening. So again, it's just something that's really important that you have to live with every day in the supply chain. So what is supply chain? How has it evolved? And how is it managing complexity? Right? We have global networks, things like that. We have more digitization. How are we managing the complexity? So it's very foundational level, and this is exciting. I started many years ago. So long ago, they didn't call it supply chain. But supply chain's role has grown in significance. It's always been about affordability, right? Cost, productivity, but it's grown. So the signature industry issues of affordability have now grown into strategy and growth, and obviously the digital transformation. So the market shift from what I like to call from volume to value, right? So it used to be back in the day, we were not involved in those strategic decisions about where we might put a factory or where should our suppliers be located or really leading an acquisition and the assimilation in that acquisition. Today, the supply chain is very much a key player in those areas. And certainly the digitization, right? How are we doing our planning? Are we connecting things on the factory floor? Are we looking at our logistics routes and have the agility to be able to change and on a dime, so to speak? So supply chain's role has grown in significance. So for those of you who are interested, this is a very dynamic area and an area that's not, I like to say, it's not just a cost center anymore. It's a growth area. So market shift from volume to value. So what does a supply chain encompass? Does anybody have a thought about, when you think about supply chain, what is supply chain to you? How would you define it in one word or two words? So if you want to maybe just put it in the chat and maybe Syed, Namisha, we could check to see what people are thinking of what is a supply chain or what does it encompass.
Sure,
Be glad to
Professor.
be
I'll
glad.
let you know in case we have any responses.
Okay, glad to hear your thoughts on that. I'll give it a second. Let you think about it a minute. I think we have something that just came in. Okay. Anybody want to be brave and share what your thoughts are on what a supply chain encompasses? Ask yourself, is it logistics? Is it supply? Is it product development? What does it encompass? Let's look at it. Whoops, those build charts always get me. This is a very simple linear supply chain,
So,
right?
Professor, we have one response
Oh, please,
from,
great.
yes.
Excellent.
So,
Good.
uh, yeah, so it's just Kiranjit, and she says employers get their raw materials via supply chain.
Great, great. So the raw material, so the key is raw material acquisition to build our product or to make our product. Very good, very good. Anybody else? Anybody else, Syed?
Yes, so I see one more. So just for the audiences, we request you to paste your or just put down your responses directly in chat instead of the private chat so that our professor can also see that.
Yeah,
But
I'll
for
try
now,
to
I'll
see
let
it.
you know the responses from Sejal and A supply chain includes all the steps involved in getting a product from raw materials to the final customer.
Oh, that was beautiful, Sejo. You should be teaching the class. Fantastic. Because it is. And, it even goes, supply chain is so very much, thank you for sharing that. It even goes very much beyond that as far as being part of product development. But here you see a very simple linear supply chain, right? On how, at the end of the day, how do we get our blueberries in the store? And you guys are very spot on, our raw materials. And then how are those raw materials processed? So, those manufacturing steps and the distribution channels and the retail are obviously part of the channel, and then obviously to our customer. So this is a very simple linear supply chain, but it does get even more complex. So thank you all for sharing. Thank you all for sharing that. So we all know, I don't know whether you drink Coca-Cola or Pepsi or whatever it is, but just to give you an idea, one of the things that to me was very exciting is that supply chain in the olden days, you used to think of it just as manufacturing, so between the four walls. But it's not that way. So when you look at the supply chain, you need to look at it in terms of the tiers. And this is what you lead. This is what you manage. This is what you connect digitally. So if you look at Coca-Cola in this particular example, let's start on the side where it says second tier suppliers. So you have those suppliers that are giving you the flavoring, the vanilla, the lemon flavoring, or what have you. You also need water, carbon dioxide, the glass suppliers, the aluminum suppliers, right? Those are your second tier suppliers. And then that moves on to the first tier. All right, it may be those plants that produce the Coca-Cola, the packaging plants, the bottling plants. And then that turns into the final manufacturing of the Coca-Cola. Obviously, you have to store some of it. You're going to have certain inventory that you want to keep, a central place where you can ship. So you have your warehousing, which then leads into your distribution. But it doesn't stop there because you have to think about distribution in many different ways. Who's our first tier customers? Who are our second tier customers? So our first tier customers could be our retailers, the supermarkets, convenience stores, could be the vending machines, or it could be right to us, the general public. So the takeaway here, team, is that when you look at the supply chain, we've just gone from the linear supply chain to looking at the tiered supply chain. Very, very important concept and something that you very much will get involved in as a associate in the supply chain, and certainly at Rutgers University will get a lot of experience in working in all of these different tiers. So I'm not going to read through this, but this is a pharmaceutical supply chain. So here's an example of complexity. There are external manufacturers, to which you rightfully pointed out with regard to raw materials. You have contract manufacturers and the like, so you can see all those things with external supply. You have your internal operations, right, where maybe you're doing your production, chemical or biological processes. You're warehousing certain drugs and material, certain drug substances, and then production as well. And then you have your external customers. I mean, this is amazing. You have your patients, you've got your hospitals, your wholesalers. So this is an example of a complex supply chain. And it's interesting because you can have factories, and we did a lot of work in India, where intermediate chemicals were made or API were made and then maybe shipped to Belgium for processing and then shipped to somewhere else for final packaging. So it's a very complex supply chain. Again, what I'm trying to show you is you have to understand these flows if we're going to understand how to connect them and how to optimize the process. And one more for you, and I'd like to ask the questions. This is a aircraft, a Boeing aircraft. If you look at this picture, take a snapshot of this picture in your mind. I'd like to ask you, what are the end-to-end ramifications of what you see? Can anybody want to share? You have a lot of global supply, right? You have quality systems that need to be consistent, all right? You have the whole coordination and the planning, the supply planning that needs to take place. You have capacity planning that needs to take place. And it all has to come together to be able to build this aircraft in the end. So you can see an incredible global supply chain. And quite frankly, a lot of times, some of these subsystems are made in countries because countries are also, guaranteeing a certain amount of orders for the aircraft. Well, that's something that comes into play as well with regard to your planning, your contracting, and the like. So again, you can see, and I'd like you to think about, and I don't know if anybody say it had answered in the chat, are there any other ramifications that you see
So,
based on?
Professor, sorry to interrupt you here, but we do have one response,
Yes, please.
and
Thank
she's
you.
saying complete integration.
Oh, perfect. You said it right. You said it right. And it's integration from literally the product development side to the planning side to the manufacturing side. And when you think about integration, I love the way you answered that because even from a quality system, they need to be similar, they need to be common, they need to be standard, right? Otherwise, I don't think you'd want to get on that aircraft. So I love the fact that you answered complete integration. That's great. Thank you so much. Very good. So again, I'm just trying to give you some examples. I wanted to give you visuals of the supply chain and what it looks like in the real world. There is a what they call a common language, supply chain operations research, or the SCORE model. And maybe some of you have been involved with this. This is a common language across all supply chain, the end-to-end supply chain. So I would be remiss if I didn't share this with you. So of all the things that I showed you, the pharmaceutical, the Coca-Cola, the Boeing aircraft, their foundation is this SCORE model. And it's critical to both strategy and execution. So again, I love that you talked about integration, but really it's that end-to-end view. And the end-to-end view is critical in the supply chain. And you guys have said it, so I really appreciate it. From your suppliers, right on through internal operations to your customers. And what you will be, and it takes leadership, it's the leadership of the interconnected trading partners. That's the value proposition that you as supply chain leaders will bring. How do you connect, integrate, optimize? That's the value proposition that you bring to your company. All right. And at the bottom line, supply chains, they're enabled by process, by technology, and by people. The intersection of those three things are critical. And we'll get into a little bit more detail in a minute. So it spans end to end. This is your SCORE model. So at every phase of the supply chain, just to summarize, planning, sourcing, manufacturing, delivering, the return of products, whether it be for warranty or recycle, at every phase of the supply chain, the overarching is the whole planning around everything. This is going on. This is what you're going to lead as a supply chain leader. And I love that, again, that you said the integration of, because how do we connect it? And it is through process, technology, and people. That's how it gets connected. So that's a little bit of the SCORE model and wanted to show you a picture of that. The other thing, supply chain in the olden days was, people looked at it like you guys had talked about. I think it's logistics. I think it's manufacturing. Certainly the foundations of anything you do are what we call quality, cost, delivery, and service, right? That's the foundational elements of execution in the supply chain. But today, there are special topics and data analytics that are critical in the supply chain. And I wanted to share those with you because the supply chain's breadth has really expanded greatly. So special topics are becoming foundational in the supply chain, on top of quality, cost, delivery, and service, right? So we talk about sustainability. And please remember that sustainability is the social performance of a business, the environmental performance of the business, and the economic performance of the business, and what it gives back to the communities and that the factories and the suppliers are in. Very, very critical. Cybersecurity. Probably now coming up, if we did I looked at a recent survey, probably one of the number one areas of potential risk in the supply chain networks. Risk management overall, critical. Many companies, I was asked when I was at Johnson & Johnson to create a center of excellence for risk management so that we could look across our whole business. These are the types of things that you will get involved in the supply chain. So special topics are coming incredibly foundational in the supply chain. So I'm sure that a lot of you, many of you, all of you are thinking, this is all nice, but how will digitization and how will AI enable the supply chain? I mean, it's ever changing. The one preface that I have is that if you don't master your process, right, your technology, give the people the insights to make decisions, people who understand domain knowledge of supply chain, then it's not as effective. It's really not as effective. So I was just curious if anyone, Syed and Numisha have, and Dr. Shu, if anyone in the audience, what comes to mind on how digitization and AI can help the supply chain or enable the supply chain?
So,
And anyone
Professor,
care to?
we have one other response, and again, it's from Shagun. So she's saying seamless information flow.
Beautiful. Seamless information flow. Excellent. Excellent. And I
And
would
another
also,
response
yeah,
is it cannot automate the process.
it cannot automate the process, meaning
Oh, yeah, so no. So he just told it can automate the
it
process.
can automate the
Yeah.
process, right? I mean, we look at what we're going through now, and Dr. Shu is an expert in this. The agentic AI making decisions for us and things like that. So there is a place for that. Certainly a place for that. Anyone else? Those are great answers, guys, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more. But any other thoughts? These are great thoughts. Okay, okay. This is something.
Professor, one more
Yeah.
response, which is
Oh, great.
institutionalized best practices.
Institutionalized best practices. I like that you said that about the best practices. The other thing I would also add is that you also in your business need to have a framework on how you have your data, how you manage your data, um, enabling best practices to the point that you all just made. That becomes critically important in the enterprise. So having that framework, it's almost like in many cases, to your point, data becomes the product, right? So how do you manage that product within? And you want to make sure that you're getting the right data, you're getting it from the right places and the like. So those are great answers. And thank you. I love this chart. And Dr. Shu can help me with this one. I'll start it. This looks like a maturity path, and it is, but it's also fundamental areas of supply chain analytics that are needed, that are critical to be able to use your data, create insights, make decisions, and the like. And these are things that, Nomisha, I know that you have been involved in your internships, and also the research that Dr. Shu has done, right? So I'll just quickly go through it, and maybe Dr. Shu can comment on it, and maybe Nomisha about some of the work that you've done in your, your
Mhm.
consulting work at Johnson & Johnson and the like.
Sure.
So there is the descriptive side of things. I ran many large organizations, global organizations for many, many years. You need dashboards. You have to be able to interpret what has happened. So to be able to use statistical methods, to be able to search through, summarize, and organize the data about how is our operation doing, right? What is our yields on the factory floor? What is our supplier performance? Those types of things. So the descriptive side is still very, very important. But then we start to get into the diagnostics. And this is where it gets exciting as well. So why has something happened? Why is something not working well? Why are we not achieving the same number of inventory turns as our competition? Why are our costs high? Why are our warehousing costs high? Right? Why do we have to get extra space? The diagnostic becomes very, very important. And I know in my experience at Johnson & Johnson and other companies, we really stressed looking at diagnostics. And to someone's point before, that integration, what you do in one area of the supply chain can actually affect the other part of the supply chain, either in a very positive way or maybe in a negative way. And you have to be able to have the understanding and create that diagnostic. Then we have the predictive side. Look what we're going through today. Trade regulations. Look, there's the macroeconomics of the world. We want to be able to look at, let's do some studies. Let's look at some algorithms, if you will. What is a slowdown in the economy? What effect is that going to have on our products? What about new trade regulations? What's going to change? What's going to change in a certain marketplace that we sell our products? What about the cost of material? So how predictive can we be? All right. And then there's the prescriptive side. What's the best course of action? Dr. Shu is an expert in optimization, improving decisions about when should we launch a product? Maybe when should we build a factory? Where should we build the factory? What should our channel look like? What should our shipment channel look like? So these areas of supply chain analytics are critical to success. And it's all data-based, process-based. Let me start. Foundational process, the ability to be able to do your analytics with your data. And then at the end of the day, the human element of decision making. So I wanted to just ask Dr. Shu, who does a lot in optimization. Xiaowei, can you describe, some of the, if you look at the prescriptive side of things, some of the things maybe that you've looked at? I know you have a lot of partnerships with companies. Just to comment on this chart overall.
So there are four stages. I think that right now, artificial intelligence has been making a huge impact on the first stage. So all those AI softwares, they can do some automated descriptive data analysis. And along the ladders, in particular, when we get to the prescriptive stage, I don't think AI will have a significant impact. The only problem is that you cannot let robots or AI software to hold the responsibility. So that's why, at this moment, we still need human decision makers like Nomisha, who is a supply chain planner. Uh, Basically, you need some human supply chain planner to make the final call. That will be the last stage. But definitely, we see more supply chain data analysts. They can use like some kind of AI assistance to speed up the initial data analysis stage. Yeah.
Great. Oh, thank you, Xiaowei. And Xiaowei and Dr. Shu is a nationally renowned scholar in this area and has also incorporated AI courses at Rutgers. I just want to shift to Nomisha for a minute. Nomisha, you've had a lot of great experiences, so just wanted to reflect on learning some of this at Rutgers and then your experiential learning side of things. Just
Yeah. So, definitely. So, first of all, Rutgers does have the supply chain courses do have a great incorporation of AI into it and the data analytics as well. We have a whole course called Supply Chain AI. We have analytics for business intelligence. We have business analytics programming and supply chain analytics. So these are some of the courses that I can think of on the top of my mind, and those are all amazing courses with amazing professors. So, as for the industry, while I was working with Johnson and Johnson as a consultant during my time at Rutgers, it was great to have all of those courses to help me out with it because I was doing a lot of automation for their scorecard processes, which involved Power BI, of course, with the supply chain knowledge. So that was, I think that included all four aspects of it, descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. And that's where it helped me a lot to have the visualization course because I was
yes.
able to do Power BI. We learned Tableau as part of that course, and now we have Power BI as part of it as well. And that helped me a lot to, see that, okay, this is how visualizations are done, data analytics is done. And I was able to gain more insights into supply chain data. So that's where it really helps. And honestly, I think there's no way you can work with supply chain now without having
Yes.
the data part of it because the industry shift with data has been a great, like, it's been tremendous. And it's good as well because you can see a lot of trends, a lot of insights into it and prevent risks as well. So,
No,
yeah.
that's great. Thank you, Dr. Shu and Nomisha, and we'll be talking a little bit more to you over the next slides as well. It's funny, I go back to my professional career. Data takes the emotion out of decision making, right? We all work in companies and people, have their view on how things should be done, whether it be just based on history or even bias, if you will. But at the end of the day, as you work on different projects and you're trying to create a change and things like that, data really takes the emotion out of things. I was involved in centralizing distribution in Europe, across all the European countries. And obviously, each country wanted its own supply chain, its own warehouse, and all those types of things. And so obviously they lobbied for that. But at the end of the day, when we looked at things as a company, and the data ruled out to say, you know what, there is a better way, right? Maybe we should use a 3PL. So it's just an example data does take the emotion out of things. So, but again, that fundamental, and to Dr. Shu's point of um, the human decision making is very, very important because that's where you align things to the enterprise goal and where the enterprise wants to go. So there's a complexity to that as well. So Dr. Shu talked about AI in the supply chain. We listed a few things, certainly on the demand side, so you can certainly look at different elements of demand and bring it into your decision making, everything from, that could even go everything from just, what are consumers saying in a chat, about a certain product or whatever, right? And you can start to incorporate into your thinking. Certainly inventory management, running models. Dr. Shu does a tremendous amount of work in logistics and transportation, optimizing, risk management, the customer experience, contracting, a big area where AI is helping and speed things up is in the supplier side of things. So you may be looking for new technologies that speeds that process up, right? So as you're going out for requests for information. At the same time, to be able to do your spend analytics, which is foundational to your supply chain to understand where are you spending your money, where should we maybe be doing some contracts and the like, and also AI. There's contracting in there that can look at certain terms and conditions and highlight potential risks and things. So AI in the supply chain, it enhances the foundation. Xiaowei, I don't know whether you wanted to comment on any of these. I know you work in all of these areas.
Well, I think that's you got to think about the AI actually is impacting everything. It's only about how much. So
Yes.
as Professor Agresta mentioned, definitely on the demand side, we're seeing more impact, but on the supply side, say like supplier management, we see
Yes.
less impact. But it just right now, actually for every job function, AI has a part of impact. It just you need to nail down which component in your
Yes.
daily job you can apply the AI tool and speed up your efficiency a little bit. Yeah.
That's a great. I think that's a great point, Dr. Shu, because at the highest level, leaders will, heads of companies will say implement AI. But to Dr. Shu's point, where will it have the impact for my business, right? Maybe it is in demand, right? Maybe it is in logistics, and focus in those areas. I think that's a great point to be able to really prioritize where the utility will come from or where you need it. So no, that's great. Um, I just put this in here. I had a student, excuse me, do a deep dive into a logistics process in a logistics company. She did an independent study. She looked at all of the systems that this company was using, and they had a lot of systems that they were using. And to someone's point before, not all of them were integrated. Well, I put this in here because this is an AI generated, multi-level chart, if you will, but it's based on the input she gave it. Now, if she was going to create this, it would have taken her quite a long time. She had all of the domain research through interviews, through reviewing their process documents, to reviewing the software. She had done all that research herself, physical research. But I had asked her, I want to see a multi-level, a multi-layered approach to this. And so she used AI to take her research and create this multi-level. So I just went through this with her the other day, and I wanted to put this in here because AI helped us in that. AI helped us expedite expedite the way we wanted to be able to show the visual as Nomisha was talking about. But again, the research was done by the student herself. So I just wanted to put that in there, and it was very powerful in the approach because we knew we wanted to do this multi-layer view. So I just wanted to put that in there as an example. So a lot to read here, but we talked about some of these things. We want to rise to the challenge. So how does supply chain, how will you as leaders, how will you as Rutgers graduates, whether at undergraduate or graduate school, how will you approach things? To be able to get a more holistic look at inventory is critical, right? It's very, very critical. Things at point of use, your ERP systems, your financial systems. Let's look at things holistically, not in silos. Mapping and monitoring the supply network, right? From receipt to the point of use. How do we, to someone's point, great, integrate all of that? Improving the management of the supply base, right? And then there are things that we won't get into today, but there's things like category management in the supplier management side of things on how you really create a strategy of your supply base. How do you segment your supply base? How do you work with your strategic partners versus a commodity? So improving the management of that supply base. Another key area is building redundancy in the supply base, right? Can you develop alternate sources? Do you need a dual factory? And do you have the proper documentation to be able to move things around? So these are just some areas that you will work on. Standardization is critical, right? Looking at making sure that we're measuring things in the same way, whether it be from our supply or within our business as well. Getting objective evidence, data, but objective evidence of quality on product performance and how you look at that. And what really designates true total cost value or true supplier performance, standardization of measurements, certainly obtaining necessary data. Where do we want to get our data from, right? How do we track things electronically? This week I had a couple of teams do presentations on cold chain, right? That's when you take a product and it needs to be at a certain refrigerated temperature, and it may be moving across the country, across the globe. How do we track that electronically to make sure that we have no outages so that there's no potential recalls? Can we centralize our forecast data? How do we measure our forecast accuracy? How do we measure, even if you take it into a hospital system, how do we measure our clinician satisfaction? Do we understand our days of inventory? So these key measurements become very, very critical. And then Dr. Shu talked about it, artificial intelligence, and Nomisha talked about it as well. How do we process this large amount of data, right? How do we customize our data analysis, right? Blockchain, which obviously started as a financial mechanism, but it really helps in the supply chain, in tracing materials, in going into those tiers that I mentioned to you before. Integrated order systems, RFID, you will get this package so you could read through this. But these are some of the ways that you guys as future supply chain leaders will learn at Rutgers and also be able to implement in your professional lives. And then again, we talk about, and this is from Deloitte, we talked about the score and plan, source, make, deliver. And we do have these connections in the traditional supply chain. But where it is moving to more is more of that digital core. Are we doing synchronized planning with our supply, with our customers, right? Are we connected to our customers? Do we understand the aftermarket? Those types of things. So you can see there's a shift, but fundamentally, still the plan, source, make, deliver is the foundation, and it's how we integrate and create these digital supply networks. That's going to be the future of where the supply chain is going and where we need professionals to really be able to take us there because it wasn't always that way. So I think that some of you are very much interested in research. And we have one of the premier researchers here in Dr. Shu. And it's something that at Rutgers we take great pride in with our PhD researchers. So I would just like to ask the question and might help us. What areas of research are you interested in the supply chain? Or do you think that the supply chain should take on? Is there any thoughts on that? And maybe some of you are researchers in the audience. Anyone? Anyone care to share? Well, we're going to be able to share with you a lot of areas. I won't read through everything, obviously, but we're going to share with you some of the research that's gone on. Did someone, I think someone maybe just,
Yes, Professor. So
yeah,
one person is saying impact of geopolitical factors in supply chain, then supply chain risks and resilience,
nice.
and
Okay.
areas relating to customer satisfaction.
Okay, great. So we got customers, we got we got risk, right, Syed? And what was the first one?
Right,
I'm
right.
sorry. I'm
And
sorry. Oh,
the other
geopolitical.
one, geopolitical factors.
Got
Professor,
it. Got it.
I'm terribly sorry, but we are running a little on
Okay.
time. We are running a little late. So I would request you to just be mindful of that.
Yep, no problem. We're finishing
Thank
up.
you. Great. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
So what I'm going to have, I'm not going to read through all of this, but we did put in different areas of research that our researchers are doing, whether it be the economy, quality, sustainability, e-business, supply chain technology, healthcare systems, very strong in healthcare, disease analysis, and you could read this, and you guys will all get this package. So these are some of the research areas that touch on really the things that your team here has brought up: interdisciplinary operations, and the economic side of things as well, and the like. So you can see all the research that takes place by our PhDs like Dr. Shu at Rutgers University. So, Syed, I hope they get this package so they could take a look at that. And then, to close, we have a lot of programs in supply chain. Bachelor of Science in Supply Chain, so your bachelor's degree. It's Dr. Shu and Misha and I are in the Supply Chain Analytics graduate program. Master of Science in Healthcare Analytics, you can read through. Even right on through to the PhD in Management with a supply chain, with a concentration in supply chain management. So these are our programs in supply chain that you could become involved in. And the link is there underneath that beautiful picture of New York City, which we're proud to be right in the zone of New York City, where you could look into these programs as well. And I mentioned Syed, and I think this is really important, and I think this differentiates us. Experiential learning is critical for us. We have programs and industry client projects, certainly our internships. We have centers of excellence in procurement and supply chain. So you could see we work to connect our students, our alumni, and industry. As Dr. Shu mentioned, we have a vast partner network at Rutgers University. And these things that I've listed on the right-hand side bring that partner network together for you all to get your experiential learning. An eye chart, I'm not going to read it, but these are some of those projects, and you can take a look at it when you get this deck. These are some of the projects that we get involved in. Some very complex supply chain issues on all parts of the spectrum in the supply chain. So we would love for you to join us. But I know you're on your educational journey and you're exploring. But we would love for you to join us. We have the number 3 graduate program in North America, and we're number 1 in the Big Ten. Number 5 undergraduate program. Our placements are strong. And we have a very focused curriculum. Dr. Shu talked about that. Nomisha talked about that. And how we're evolving with our curriculum. We just don't stand still. So we would love for you to join us. And with that, I hope that you got a good feel for what the supply chain is, probably broader and deeper than what you may have been thinking for those who have not been part of it. But we want to thank you for your interest in the topic, most importantly, and your interest in Rutgers University. So with that, I'll close, Syed. All right.
Thank
Hopefully,
you, Professor. I
you're
think that
welcome.
was an extremely insightful presentation, and our audiences have learned a lot. So we've been seeing hearts and applauses in the comment section. So
Ah,
please feel free to put in your questions in the chat box. We can take up a few questions. So if anyone has any questions for Professor Joseph or Professor Shu or for Nomisha, please feel free to ask. So we'll just wait for a minute or so.
sure, of course. I know did we go a little over, Syed?
Yeah, Professor, but I think it's fine because everybody is really keen and interested in knowing a lot more. Okay.
Great.
Yes. So Tarun, we will be uploading the recording of this session on our YouTube channel. So you can check our YouTube page. It's called Education USA India, and we will just be posting the information regarding our social media channels. So do check our YouTube page in a few days' time. Okay.
Great.
Right. I don't see any questions. Right. Would anyone have anything to ask, Professor? I see one question in the private chat. So I'll
Okay.
just let you know. Yeah. And so this question is on the sustainability part, which you did speak about.
Yeah.
So the question is, sustainability is a big topic. How are supply chains balancing efficiency with environmental responsibility in real terms?
Okay. So I'll give you an example. Maybe it's the best way to answer it. Certainly, there's an investment in things that you have to do, and you want to be able to see what the impact is going to be. So companies today, let me give you an example of shampoo. And a company has a lot of ingredients in the shampoo. Consumers are asking for more sustainable materials in the shampoo. I'll take a surfactant as an example, which is part of a shampoo. And what the company has to do is to say, okay, our consumers, because it all starts with the customer, our consumers are asking for a more sustainable surfactant, whatever that level may be. And we're not at that level. The company then has to make a decision. Do we do it internally, i.e., build a factory? Or is it more economical to partner with a supplier, third party, I should say, external manufacturer, who may be investing in that area? So there are trade-offs in the sustainability piece of things. At the end of the day, it's really what your customer is desiring, but you also have to make those supply chain decisions as for in this particular example, do we make something? Do we build a factory? Do we invest in that? Do we use a third party? Right? Those types of things. So first, You're going to measure whatever risk there may be in the way you're having your supply chain, or in this case, your shampoo, and then make those trade-off decisions and also capability decisions as to should we make, should we buy. So that's just one specific example. It all will go back to what your customers desire. And how then would you optimize your process to give them what they do desire? You have to understand what's driving the need. Shaway, I don't know whether you wanted to comment on that at all, or Nomisha.
No, I agree on that part. And yep, as far as sustainability goes, it's not just the environmental sustainability,
That's right.
but it's also the business's sustainability. So how do you balance that along with all the risks is the major thing that's been evolving right now.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Nomisha, because, and to your point, to the person's the question as well, I gave you a specific product example, but Nomisha talks about the people side of things. Are you training your people, right? Are you treating the labor correctly, the way they should be treated? All of those types of things. Are you giving back to the community? That's part of sustainability as well. And that's something as a business you need to be able to understand, because if you don't, you will create, to Numisha's point, you will create risk in your business. So you have to look at it from a risk perspective as well. That was a great question. Thank you.
Right. So I think this was it. And with this, we'll wind up our session for today. Again, I'd like to thank all three of you, Professor Joseph, Professor Shu, and Nomisha. It has been wonderful having you here, and it's been an honor for all of us. And thank you for giving us such great insights into supply chain management. And yes, thank you to all of our audiences who joined in and who participated in today's session. So have a great day and good evening.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Feel
you.
free to contact us for anything that you may
Yes,
need. And keep up the good work, Education USA.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Professor. Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everyone.
Thanks, Shaway. Thanks, Namisha. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Professor.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
evening. Thank
You too.
you.